Alright, to do a fuel pressure release, you need to move the fuel pump fuse, which is in the engine bay on the S13s, but on the S14s it's inside the car. If you look on the cover, it's the fuel pump right there with the 15A. You'll need to remove the cover. There's two tabs on each side, front and back. You pull up on it. Then you take some needle nose pliers and pull the 15 amp fuse out. Okay, next you need to remove your gas cap. You need to push your lever beside the driver's seat to open the door. Okay, after your gas lid is open, you need to remove the gas cap. Take it completely off. Now you need to turn the car over and let it run until it shuts off. Just to get all fuel pressure out, just turn it over 3 times. Sometimes it'll start up and then it'll die out. It just releasing all fuel out of the lines. Alright, next to do the compression test, you need to remove all your spark plug wires and all your spark plugs. Next you need to remove your spark plugs. It's a 5/8 socket. Alright, next on the compression test, you need to install the compression tester. It just screws down the spark plug hole. Start with number 1 cylinder. You just hand tighten it. You don't gotta be torqued down or anything. Alright, now it's hooked up. You can do it by yourself, but since we have people helping us, we're going to do it with 2 people. You just go in the car, push the gas all the way to the floor, and turn the motor over 5 revolutions.
5 revolutions.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Alright, I'll just make sure. Push the gas
Press the gas all the way to the floor.
6.
Don't matter. It's going to stop. Alright, with that one we have 180. Alright, next you need to release the air out. And then start with number 2 cylinder. You're going to want to get your gas almost empty, if not all the way empty, for when you go to install your fuel pump. Makes it a lot easier. And also, if you're going to keep your AC, we're going to pull the compressor off and sit it to the side, so we're not going to get it discharged or anything. But if you're not going to, get it professionally discharged. Your next step is decide whether to leave if you have power windows, leave them up or down, whichever way you want to do, because you're going to remove the battery. So whichever way they are, they're going to be left like that till you get done with your swap. Now that you're done with the fuel pressure release and the compression test and everything, you go ahead and put your fuse back in the fuse box. You don't have to put it in right now, but I usually just put them back in there just so you don't lose them. Alright, next you're going to want to remove your battery terminals off your battery. This car here has HID lights, so that's what all this extra stuff is, but it's a 10mm nut. This one here is pretty corroded on there, so after you get that off, then remove the positive side. This one, someone put a different size nut on here. I guess because they got all this extra stereo stuff and everything. Just loosen it up and pull it off as well. Just bolt it onto the aftermarket clamp there. We have to remove this because this is going to stay on here, this piece right here, and then this is going to go with the harness. So you want to go ahead and remove this bolt off here. If you got it stopped, it's not going to be like this. You're just going to have this piece right here that hooks into the back of it, and you'll have to unhook these 2 plugs right here, pull them out the back, and then your battery will be ready to come out. Usually it has a battery hold down. This car don't have them for some reason, but it's usually a 10mm bolt. To remove it, it's usually held on right here to this piece, and then the piece that goes back here, and it's got the bracket that goes over. Just a 10mm nut on this side and this side, and pull it off, and then you pull the whole battery up. Alright, now that your battery is disconnected, you can remove it out of the car. Make sure you do not set it on concrete because it can explode on concrete. Okay, you need to drain your transmission fluid. Your drain plug is right there, and it's a 1/2 inch ratchet that you need to take it off with. I believe it is torqued down to like 25 or 30 foot-pounds, so it shouldn't be that tight, but if you had some stupid mechanic do it before, it's probably torqued down pretty tight. So you might have to use a breaker bar on it. Make sure you got a drain pan below and some gloves on because that stuff is stinking. Alright, next you need to drain your motor oil. You need to remove your cap. Then you need to go below, and there's a 14mm bolt that you need to remove on the oil pan. After everything's done draining, put your caps back on, put your cap back on, your drain plug back on the oil pan, and the drain plug back on the transmission. Okay, now we're removing the AIV unit. We're unscrewing the soft line to the hard line right there. Just loosen the clip up and pull it back. This stuff's been on here for a while, so it gets stuck. It takes a little bit of coaxing to get off. Okay, once you got it broke loose, just pull it off, like so. And next would be to remove the soft lines on the bottom here. You got 2 soft lines on the bottom you need to pull off. Most of the time these AIV units, I mean, nobody ever reuses them, so you could definitely tear it up to get it off, but it's good practice to get things off without breaking it, because you will be removing quite a bit of hoses that will be stuck like this. So just be patient with it, work with it. Like I said, it's good practice to get the other stuff off without tearing it up. Anybody can tear something off, but to properly take it off is the trick. Yeah, the best way to do it is grab a hold and twist it back and forth to break it loose, and then usually they'll pull right off after you break it loose. And next we're going to remove the hose going to the air box. You can just leave the rubber line on the AIV unit because you're not going to be reusing it. Alright, next you have 3 10mm bolts there that you need to remove. I would remove the bottom one first, that one down there, and then take the top 2 off. Because the clip down below that you need to remove for the wiring, we're going to remove the whole assembly to take that off, because I'll show you when we get to it. They're kind of a pain to remove because they have a little metal clip that runs around them. But if you have a ratcheting wrench, that's going to work best. I would definitely invest in a set of those. They work well on a lot of things. While you're doing all this, actually before you do all this, you want to go ahead and shoot all your bolts and nuts on your exhaust manifold and your downpipe with some WD-40 or PB Blaster. Just let them be soaking while you're doing this. You're going to pick it up, and then you have that wiring harness on the bottom. That's the only thing that's going to be holding it. This right here, and it has a metal clip that goes on each side and on the bottom, but not on the top. So you need to take I'm going to take a small flathead screwdriver and pop out the edge right there. As you can see on the bottom, there's a little tab that holds it in there. And that's what's making it hard to get out. So you kind of want to pull on it with the bottom using 2 screwdrivers. And then start off with the side and then just pull it around. There it is. And then after you get the metal out, the plug will just pull right straight out. And that's it, the whole unit's out. Alright, next you have the hard line left. You have a 10mm bolt that holds it to the heat shield there, need to remove. And also it runs over to the downpipe there, where it hooks on. That's going to be a pain in the butt to get. You might end up having to cut it off, but I believe that's a 24mm. But usually you need some channel locks to try and get that off. Definitely shoot that with some WD-40 or PB Blaster and let it sit for a little while. The bottom one is a 10mm, and then there's a bracket that hooks to the heat shield there. It's a 12mm. You need to go down and try to remove the bolt down there on the downpipe. It's a 24mm. Probably have to use some channel locks on it. Okay, before you remove the hard line, we're going to have to break ours off because our bolt will not come loose, but it's alright, you're not going to reuse it anyways. You need to remove your O2 sensor. It's a 22mm. Don't forget to take your 12mm bolt out of your heat shield there. And after you get that out, the whole thing will come off. It's probably just getting stuck, probably gonna break off.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine, it breaks off. After you get that broke off, then the whole thing will come out. Our bolt broke off, which is a very common thing to happen because it's exhaust stuff there and that stuff gets all rusted and corroded. Alright, next you need to remove your heat shield for your manifold. You have a 10mm bolt there. You have another 10mm bolt down there. Another on the other side. Definitely make sure you spray these with WD-40 and PB Blaster. Like I said, a lot of them bolts break off, but it is okay as long as they break clean. Okay, down here underneath the car, you're going to need a deep well 14mm and an extension to get to these 3 nuts you're going to take off to remove the exhaust manifold to the downpipe. You got one right there. You have, it's hard to see, but you have another one right up there, and then you have another one on the other side here up in there. It's hard to see them, but there are 3 of them you got to get off. And then make sure you definitely shoot those with WD-40 really good and let them soak. And then you need to remove the downpipe to the cat off. This one here has an aftermarket test pipe on it, so. But the stock cat has a bolt that screws all the way through the cat. It's actually threaded on the cat, where this one right here is held on by a bolt and a nut. All right, up top here, you have this one that is on right there. You can see the socket right there on the edge. That one's tough to see, tough to videotape. It's going to be hard to remove. Sometimes the actual stud will come out with the nut, and sometimes just the nut will come off. So it depends on which one's more stuck as to which one's going to come off. Removing this one right here below the O2, where the O2 sensor goes. Like I say, they're rusted on there or whatever, got grime or whatever, so they're pretty tough to get off. But be real careful because you can break them, and if you break them, then you're going to have a huge pain in the butt to get it off. You're basically going to have to cut it off. But so far, so good. These are coming off pretty good. So
WD-40 is the key.
yeah, WD-40 is definitely key, but sometimes even that won't help it. As you can see, the stud started coming out with the nut, and it broke off. But it's okay because it just runs straight through the downpipe and screws into the manifold, so we'll be good. As soon as we get them all off, then the downpipe will come down and it will be alright because we're not going to reuse this manifold anyway, so it's okay. And you can, you can remove it later with some easy outs or whatever, so it's not a big deal. But the last one on the other side there, you need to use a shorter extension on that one because it's kind of in a tighter spot. With the other 2, you can use a big extension. All right, next you need to remove your cat from your downpipe. Okay, once you have your cat disconnected from your downpipe, just give it a little wiggle and break it off the studs up there, and it'll come down. The whole piece will come down. And you are good to go. Alright, next you're going to need to drain your coolant out of the block. If you look down in between number 2 and 3 runner, you'll see a 14mm bolt down there. You need to remove that. Put a pan underneath the motor though, because it's going to drain a lot of coolant from that. And it's a 14mm. You can put towels down below or whatever to catch it from going all over the cross member and power steering and all that stuff, but I'm going to clean that stuff up anyway, so I'm not worried about it. But definitely watch out because it is going to drain a lot of fluid. Just try your best not to drop the plug down into the pan below or lose it. Okay, now that that's draining, you got to remove your cap on your radiator, which will help it run out even better. Alright, when you're going to drain your radiator, on the driver's side underneath the radiator, if you still have the plastic there, it's up in that hole there. It's a Phillips head screw. You just unscrew it, it's plastic, so be careful when you go to tighten it back up because you can break it. Just loosen that up, let it fall down and let it drain. Make sure you have a pan below because it's going to drain fluid. Alright, now you're going to remove that plastic plug. Keep some rags with you or whatever because you're going to get your hands wet doing it. Make sure you have the cap off the radiator. Alright, next you're going to remove your overflow line hooked to the radiator right there. There's a little nipple. Just take some nose pliers and pull that off. And then you're going to want to pull it down to the drain pan below. Try and hold it up the whole time so it don't leak any radiator fluid on you. And then you'll drain everything out of your coolant tank that's in there. Take the cap off the tank as well. Helps it flow better. And we're good. Normally on a stock car, this one has the radiator shroud already removed and has the AC fan removed already. You'll have a plug for the AC fan right here you'll need to remove the fan shroud with it. But next we're going to remove the fan itself, which it has 4 10mm nuts on it right there. You want to do it while the belts are under tension so it will not just keep spinning on you. Sometimes even with the belt is under tension, you might have to hold the pulley itself. You can just turn the pulley over by grabbing the nut and pulling it up like that, just get on top. Or you can get underneath the car to get the bottom 2 off. And then you just pull it off after you get all 4 off. Normally, when you have your radiator shroud and everything on there, you would have to pull the fan off and sit it inside the radiator shroud. You would have to disconnect the plug I showed you here for the AC fan, and then you would pull, of course you'd go ahead and remove all your airbox and everything first, and then you would remove your 2 10mm nuts holding these brackets down right here, and of course you'd remove your radiator hoses and everything top and bottom, and then you pull the whole thing up as one unit. That's how that would work out. That's usually the best way to do it, but since this don't have a radiator shroud on it, we went ahead and removed the fan. Alright, now we're going to remove our airbox assembly. First thing you need to do is remove the 8mm clamp where it connects the airbox to the intake. Alright, next you need to remove the tie strap holding the harness onto the hose there. It's got a little tab on it. You just pull the tab back and then release it so you don't have to cut it off. You can reuse that. And next you want to remove both those soft lines. You got a big one and a smaller one. You just pull them off the intake tube. Just pull the clamps off of them and then push back on the front of them with the needle nose pliers while you're pulling and twisting it. And they should come right off. Alright, after you have those off, you have a 10mm bolt right there holding it to the radiator bracket. Alright, next is your 10mm clamp holding it to the MAF. And you'll be able, after you get that off, you'll be able to pull the whole intake air tube off. Alright, next you're going to want to remove your radiator hose to the intake because it's going to be in the way of your coupler right there to your intake, to your throttle body. It's a 10mm clamp as well. Go ahead and put a pan underneath there because it still might leak some fluid out when you pull that off. Alright, next we're going to remove the breather hose going to the valve cover to the coupler on the throttle body. You can leave it on the coupler and just remove it off the valve cover. And then you have one more tie strap you need to remove. It's got a little clip on it. Just pull the clip back and it releases it. Hooks it to a wiring harness. And after you get that off, you can remove your clamp to your throttle body for your coupler. It's 8mm clamp. Alright, next you're going to have to remove all your vacuum lines off the radiator hose right there. It has a little clip you just pull over. and then pull it up, and then all your vacuum lines will come free. And then after you get all them off, you remove the 10mm clamp on the water neck there to remove that radiator hose from the water neck. We're leaving all our radiator hoses on the radiator. You can remove them completely if you want to. Keep pounding for that because they probably leak a little fluid too. Alright, next we're going to remove the radiator completely. You got two brackets with 10mm clamps holding them on. After you have the brackets out of the way, you're going to grab the radiator. Watch your hoses. If you left your hoses on, they're going to get in the way of stuff. And you're just going to pull the radiator straight up. Watch out for spillage because the hoses can still leak fluid out. If you had the radiator shroud and everything still on there, it would be a little more difficult to pull out. But now it's completely out. Alright, a good practice that I do is everything I remove, like the brackets with the bolts, I put them in the Ziploc baggie and label them if they need labeling, where those there wouldn't need labeling because you know what they are. But you know, you'll end up with a lot of baggies and stuff, but you know where everything is and you're not going to lose it and you're not going to be hunting around for it because you know where it's at. Just put them all in the Ziploc bag and then put them in a box somewhere and make sure you label everything so you know where it is and where it went to or whatever. Yeah, that's just a good practice I do. Next, you're going to want to remove your MAF and your air box itself. You have another metal clip that goes around the plug there that you got to remove, like we did on the AIV unit. Okay, when you're going to remove these metal clips, a really good and easy way to do it is to stick the flathead through the small hole there on that side, which will pop it out. So you can use your other little small flathead to stick in there. And after you stick it in that hole there and pop it out, use your other screwdriver to pry it out and then pull it up. And you'll be able to just pull it out like that. And after you get that out, the plug will just pull straight out. Alright, next to remove the air box, you got 4 clips, one on each side, that you got to release to pull the whole box up. Alright, to remove the air box completely, you have a 10mm bolt right here you need to remove on top. And then on the bottom side, you have 2 on each side there on the bottom. Has the rubber on each side, so you can actually, when you remove that top one, you can probably just slide it forward and the whole box will come out. This whole air tube here will come with it as well, so it goes down to the bottom. And the whole assembly comes out. Alright, next on your vacuum lines, under the throttle body, you have 4. You get the one on the left there, it runs over. To the top solenoid there on the carbon canister. The next, second in line, runs down. Runs in over here to one of the lines that was running into the AIV unit. And then third in line, it has a T on it, which the T ran into the air tube, and then the other side comes over. It runs to the other side where the AIV was at. So that's both your AIVs there. And then the fourth one is the bigger one. It runs over to the carbon canister on the bottom of it right there. So that's all of your vacuum lines there. You can either remove them off the motor and leave them on the car, or you can remove them off the canister and leave them on the motor, or remove them completely. We're going to remove them completely. We pulled the water line off of underneath the throttle body just to get a little more room to get in there and remove these lines. Because they're a pain in the butt to get off too. They're all stuck on there. They'll be on there forever. It's really just grab them and twist them and pull them off. Really, you can cut them off if you need to. Like that one there, just ripped off. But it's no big deal. You have another strap there where you gotta pull the tab and then release it. We're gonna disconnect this plug here for the power steering. You need to pull up on the bottom of it and then pull out. And then you have the clip up here for the coil. You just press it in on top and then pull it out. Then you also have another plug you need to remove right there on the coil, and then another one on the bottom side. This small one right here is kind of a pain. You got to squeeze it and pull it out. It always wants to get stuck though. And then this bottom one, you just simply press it in and pull it out. You have these hold downs, the plastic things that hold it down to the car itself, and you just need to pull them out of the car. There's a few of them running through there. Just want to grab the harness and pull it out. Another one right there. You can take the whole harness and pull it over to the passenger side of the car. Alright, next we're going to move the carbon canister completely. You have the soft line run to a hard line right there. Go ahead and pull that clip up and then pull that line off. Alright, to remove the clip here, there's a 10mm bolt holding a bracket down there. You need to remove that, and then that wire will be able to move, because that wire is going to be in your way. If the hoses won't come loose, you can take a razor knife and just slice it straight up through to the hard line. Then you have a 10mm bolt holding the bracket around the canister there. Just loosen it up and the canister should pull straight up. Alright, before you pull the canister out, there's another hose on the bottom that you need to remove. After you got that one removed, you should be able to pull the canister straight up. After you have the clamp loosened and all the hoses removed. Your canister is completely out. To remove the bracket, there is two 10mm bolts behind there. You need to remove those, and the whole bracket will be removed. Okay, next we're going to move the throttle cable and the cruise control cable. You need to take the throttle arm and turn it up. And pull the cable out like that. It just slides right out. That's the cruise control, and then we're going to do the gas cable. Slides out just like that. And then you have two 14mm nuts that you need to loosen up. Just loosen up one side. You ain't got to do the top and the bottom. You can just do the top or the bottom. Just loosen them up and then they'll slide right off. Okay, now we're just gonna pull them off the motor now. Then just pull it over on the driver's side out of the way. Probably stick it up underneath the windshield wiper. And then your cruise control cable just has the one clip on it, on the intake manifold there. And you can just pull it over on the side out of the way. Okay, when you're going to remove your heater hoses on the back of the motor to the firewall, you can see them right here. You have two connected to each other with the metal hose right there. I would probably remove the bottom clamp. They're both 8mm clamps. I'd probably remove the bottom clamp and remove that bottom hose and leave it on the motor, and then leave this top one on the car. And the hose right behind it there in the firewall, I'd remove that clamp and remove it from the firewall and leave the whole thing on the motor, because it's such a tight spot back there, you're not going to be able to get back there and remove them. So you can remove them when you get them off the car, but keep a drain pan below because it probably will leak some more fluid. Make sure you get these clamps as loose as you possibly can, because sometimes if the clamp's not loose enough, that's what holds it on there and won't let it come off. So get them as loose as you can. I would go ahead and remove this clamp completely. Just screw the screw all the way out as far as it'll go until it comes off. Just go ahead and try and pull this clamp down after you get the screw removed. And take your needle nose pliers or whatever and try and press down on the hose to get it to come loose. These water hoses are always stuck on there because they've been on there so long. There, that one's off. As you can see, that one was pretty hard to get out, and you can also see on this hard line here, there's a nipple. That's what makes it hard to get off too, because it's stuck on there, and plus it's got that nipple holding it back. So I mean, once you get that off, you'll have a good idea how the rest of them's gonna come off. But on the firewall here, where this one's gonna go in, the nipple like this on the firewall is actually made out of plastic. So be extra careful when you're removing that one, because you can break that. And then you're going to change your whole heater core, and you do not want to do that, because that is a pain in the butt to do. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and remove that one now. It's 8mm as well. I'm just going to grab the hose and try and wiggle it back. There we go, I got it off with the clamp still attached. See right there, you can see that one's plastic. It's made out of plastic, so be extra careful with it. Next, you're going to want to remove your brake booster line right here. It runs all the way over to your brake booster. Just grab your clamp right here, move it back, and usually you can see how it's pretty much freed up. So you can just pull it straight back. These usually come out pretty easily, because there's only air going through here. It's just a vacuum. And after you got that off, you can leave the rest of it on the motor. You need to take your pulley there where the two holes are. There's a bolt right there behind where his finger, right there where his finger is. You got to get the hole lined up there so you can get to the bolt to loosen the pump. So you need to turn the crank pulley. It's a 27mm. And you just keep turning until you get the hole lined up so you can get to that bolt. If it's on the compression stroke, it's going to get kind of tight and hard to pull up. Alright, as you can see now, the bolt is in the hole there. It's a 14mm. You need to loosen it up so the pump will move. Alright, now we're going to go loosen up our tensioner so we can release our belt. The nut on the left side there, they're both 14mm. You need to loosen that first, because that's what loosens the tensioner. And then the one on the top right there is the one that actually moves the belt and releases it. And once you got the bolt that he's on now loosened up, you can push the power steering pump towards the motor to loosen up the belt, and then remove it. Okay, once you got it loosened up enough, you need to push down the power steering pump and release the belt and then remove it. Since you're going to remove the power steering pump with the motor, you need to drain the fluid out of it. There's an 8mm clamp down there you need to remove the hose going to the power steering pump from the reservoir. And after you get it released, you're going to grab it and pull it off. We got a rag over the top of the AC compressor and a pan below for the drainage. Just like all the rest of the hoses, it's definitely going to be a little tough to get off. But a little work and you will get it off. Make sure you have pan below because it's going to drain a lot of good stuff. Also, while the fluid is draining, you want to turn your steering wheel lock to lock, left to right, and make sure all the fluid has come out of the reservoir completely. All right, we're going to remove the bolt on the back of the power steering pump. It's a 24mm. You need to go ahead and pull your dipstick over a little bit. Just get out of the way. Just bend it back. There's going to be a crush washer on the inside and the outside, so watch out for them to fall off when you pull that nut out. That's what the crush washer looks like. There's two of them. Alright, here on the front you got another 14mm bolt for the AC pulley. You need to loosen that one, and there's another 14mm below the car to move the belt. So after you get that loose, we're going to go under the car and then loosen that one and push the belt up to release it. Alright, here under the car we have the 14mm bolt we're going to loosen up to release the belt. So we'll go ahead and loosen it up just like we did on the power steering pump. Loosen up a good bit so you can push the assembly up to loosen the belt to remove it.
There you go.
Alright, and then after you get the belt off, then you want to remove the compressor. Okay, down here under the car, under the AC compressor, you have two bolts you need to remove. They're 19mm as well. That one in the front and that one in the back. Break them loose, and then you can probably pull them off with your fingers. I would recommend doing the bottom ones first and then the top, especially if you're doing it by yourself, because of course it's going to want to fall down when you remove them. So we're going to go ahead and remove the bottom ones first. They're already broke loose, so we're just going to pull them off by hand. Alright, now we're up top. We're going to remove the bolts on top. They're 14mm as well. You got this one in the front. And then there's one in the back. We'll do the one on this side first in the front. They're probably not going to come out. You're probably going to have to leave them on the compressor when you get them loose because there's not enough room to pull them back. So just get them loose where they're coming back and then just leave them on there. So when you pull the compressor out, it'll come off with it. Now we're going to move to the back. Alright, here on the back, we have this next one. Right there behind the AC line. Just make sure you don't loosen those AC lines with the coolant in there, or it will come out. Now we're going to pull this bolt off the back. It's 14mm as well, and it probably won't come off neither. Just loosen it off and pull it till it comes off the block. And if you're doing it long, try and hold the compressor when you pull that bolt off, but we have people helping us, so we have someone below holding it for us. And then pull it back till it pulls off the block. And after it's off, the compressor should come off the block, be loosened off the block. And then you can tie strap it up to the side of it. We're actually going to tie strap it to where the air box used to go. Just going to tie strap it around the compressor and up through there. Just hold it up out of the way. Okay, once you got the compressor unbolted, we took 5 regular size tie straps and strapped it onto where the AC compressor goes right there. And then it just pulls it up out of the way. We're going to leave it all hooked up and everything, all the lines and everything, so we ain't got to discharge it because we're going to leave the AC on. But when we go to pull the motor, we're going to pull the motor mount and the motor mount bracket off the motor before we pull the car, just so it don't hit the AC compressor when we're pulling it off. But we'll go into that when we get there. Okay, we're getting ready to remove the wiring harness, so we're going to go ahead and pull the wiper washer tank off, the neck off, just so it'll get out of the way. You're probably going to have to remove that anyways because it's going to get in the way of intercooler piping. But you got a 10mm nut on the fender there to release that bracket to hold it on. Then you pull that off, and then you just grab the neck and just pull it straight up, really. You can see these two connectors here. You have the one there and then the one right there. Those are the ones that actually hook the harness to the chassis harness, so we're going to remove those. You got a tie strap there you need to remove. It's got a little clip on it. You pull up and release it. And then those connectors, you just push the button in and pull them out. And then take the harness and pull it out around the coolant overflow tank, because we're going to be pulling the harness off the car completely. It usually has some hold downs on it and stuff you might have to remove. Just take a screwdriver and pop them off the car. Then over here at the tank, you have a ground spot there where our tank's actually hooked on, but it's usually a bracket on the stock. It's a 10mm bolt. Just loosen that off and then remove the tank completely, because there's a hole down behind the tank in the way. And there's probably another one over behind it. There's usually 2 bolts on the stock tank. They're both 10mm. Then after you got the tank out of the way, you can see the 2 hold downs behind it. So you're going to have to pop off the car to remove the harness off of it. Just take a flathead screwdriver and just pry them off out of the holes. Try your best not to break them if you can, because you can reuse those, but if you do, it's not that big a deal. And then on that ground wire, you have another hold down on the strut tower there. Or you have another hold down right here behind this hard line you're going to have to pull off. The hard line is movable, but try your best not to break it or bend it. Just pop it off like that. Okay, your next hold down is behind the fuel filter there. Right there. Just pop it off as well. Your next one is back a little bit further from the one you just took off. Right there. Alright, next up here under the wiper motor, you have a plastic piece you just slide over, and then the harness will be able to pull down. Alright, your next one's right here behind the intake manifold. You need to use some those pliers and squeeze it, and then push on the harness to pull it out from that bracket right there. While you're squeezing on that, with the needle pliers, you want to push on the wiring harness to push it out of that bracket. Yeah. Alright, push it all the way out and pull it down. After you get that clip pulled off that bracket, you have a 10mm bolt for the bracket to the firewall you need to remove. Alright, pull it out. Alright, your next one is another clip that you need to remove. It's right there. It's actually the bracket hooked to the EGR tube and all that stuff. You just got to squeeze it with the needle nose pliers and pull up on the wiring harness. Alright, after you get that out, then we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, on the S13 motors, it's a little different than the S14. You have 2 plugs on the back for the emission stuff that you need to remove. But they're the plugs that have the metal ring on the back of, around the sides of them. So you're not going to be able to get those off till you actually get the motor halfway pulled out of the car. So you're going to save that for then. Just don't forget to do it. But you have the one over here on the passenger side, and then you have the other one over here on the driver's side. There's 2 of them back there. So you can disconnect the rest of the stuff on the car, on the harness. Just leave those 2 on there for when you get the motor pulled halfway out. And then you're going to have to remove those. Okay, next here on the driver's side, you have 2 12mm bolts to remove off the head. It's 2 ground spots, and there's a bracket on there for the O2 sensor. Just go ahead and remove the front one first, and remove that ground wire. That bracket there, you probably have to bend it down to get to the other one. Alright, next you have 2 10mm bolts holding the harness down. You need to remove those. We've already broke ours loose. Alright, next you have your 4 injector plugs you need to remove. You need to push it in and then pull it out. And then next you got to remove there's a 10mm bolt behind the harness there onto the valve cover where his finger's at. You need to remove that and then the harness will come loose off the head. Then next you have your wire going to the distributor. It's another press in and pull out. Then next on the front of the head you have 2 hold downs that you need to release the harness from. Then next you have the big one on top there in front of the manifold. You just pull it off the clip there and then squeeze it and release it. And then your next one's right below it, same deal. Alright, next you have 3 more plugs on the front side there. We're going to do the one on the right first. It's just a squeeze it and pull out too. And then your next one is the black one in the middle. You squeeze it and pull it. It's a bit harder to do. Alright, next you got the one with the metal clip around it. Just want to use the 2 small flathead screwdrivers to pry it out. Now just pull it straight off. Next you have a ground on the side of the block. It's 12mm. Alright, when you're going to move your transmission harness, we got it outside the car so you can see it better. The neutral position switch is the one you need to disconnect first. You need to take a flathead screwdriver and pry that little clip up right there and then just pull it apart. Alright, next you want to release all the clips that hold the wire into the transmission. You just pull them up or down and it releases them. They just basically hold the wires so they don't fall around everywhere. And then next is your 5th position switch. Push and pull apart plug. That little rubber piece, make sure you put them back in the connectors. Sometimes they fall out. And then next is your 4th position switch. It's another connector you need to put the screwdriver in and pry the little clip out and then pull it apart. And then next is your reverse lamp switch. It's just a push and pull apart. And then next is your speed sensor. It goes all the way from the speed sensors right there on the back. And then it runs a wire all the way to the connector. And it's a push and pull apart connector. Alright, we're going to remove the slave cylinder. You have 2 14mm bolts you need to disconnect. As soon as you take the last one down, you can just leave it, just let it hang there. Okay, to remove your motor mount nuts, they are 14mm, and we are on the passenger side right now. You need to remove that one. The passenger side one is easier to see. The driver's side one's going to be harder to see. So we're going to go ahead and remove the passenger side one right now. And over here on the driver's side, remove the motor mount nut. It's tougher to see, but as you can see behind the power steering lines there, there's another 14mm nut to remove. You got to come from below and use a long extension to remove it with a deep well socket. Same on the passenger side too. Use a long extension with a deep well 14mm socket. They're usually pretty tight, so you might want to use a breaker bar on them. Okay, now we're going to remove the drive shaft from the car. There's a bolt going through it, but it's locked on there, so it's not going to turn. But there's a nut on the back side there. It's a 14 millimeter. You need to break it loose. We use a ratcheting wrench turned backwards, and we put a metal pipe on it just for leverage. Because they're usually pretty tight. So we just put a metal pipe on the ratcheting wrench, and then we take like a crowbar or whatever kind of pipe bar you want to put in there, stick it through the hole of the yoke of the drive shaft, just to hold it, and then break it loose like that. And you want to leave the car in neutral, and then leave the e-brake off so the tires will spin. So when you get one off, you can spin the whole drive shaft over to get the other ones off. Makes it a whole lot easier. And that's what the crowbar is used for in the yoke, to hold it still. So when you break it loose, it don't move on you. But the ratcheting wrench works great turned backwards, so it's not in the way of the sway bar. And the reason you use a ratcheting wrench is because you will not be able to get a regular ratchet and socket on it. Make sure when you're removing your nut that your bolt don't back out of the slot, or else it'll just start spinning on you. So you just pull the nut off and then just push the bolt out and remove both the bolt and the nut. They're 4 altogether, and they're 14 millimeter. Okay, once you remove your last bolt and nut, you will push the drive shaft forward towards the front of the car, and then it will come down. On your center bearing here, you have 2 17 millimeter bolts you need to remove. Just break those loose, and after you get those broke loose, the whole drive shaft is going to come down. So be careful taking the last one off, because it's going to fall down. You actually kind of want to break the bolts loose and then hold the drive shaft while you're removing the bolts. Okay, when you get ready to remove your last bolt, you want to hold up on the bracket there, remove the last bolt, and then the drive shaft is going to want to fall down. And after you get the last bolt off, grab the front of the drive shaft and that bearing you're holding and pull it out of the back of the transmission. Keep a drain pan below, because it probably will drain a little bit of fluid out of the back of the transmission. You just want to grab it and slide it back. Kind of wiggle it up and down or side to side, whatever, while pulling back on it. It's going to be a little bit heavy when you get it out, so be careful. And it's bendable in every motion. So after you get it out, just lay it down and then pull it out from under the car. Okay, when you're going to disconnect your starter, you need to remove the plastic boot. Well, it's like a plastic cover right there to access the 12 millimeter nut in there. It's for the power wire on it. Just pull that back and then use a deep well 12 millimeter socket to remove that nut. And after you get the nut off, just pull that wire off of the stud. There's also a washer on there as well, a lock washer. And then next on the starter, you have 2 connections. You need to disconnect that plug right there. It's a push and pull plug. And then there's a tie strap holding the wires together. You can cut that tie strap before you disconnect the plug. Okay, after you have the tie strap off, you can access the plug a whole lot easier. Just press it in and pull it apart. Okay, next you need to remove the negative battery cable from the intake manifold, 12 millimeter. On the alternator, you have a plug there. You need to press in the side and then pull it out. Usually they get stuck, so a good trick is take a small flathead screwdriver, stick it in the side there that you press on, so you don't have to press it with your finger, and then pull it out with your other hand. Works better because sometimes they're harder to press in with your finger and they don't want to come out. Then next, underneath that, you have a rubber boot you need to pull back to access a 10mm nut. You can just use a regular socket to get that off. And after you get the nut off, just pull the wire off the stud. And it's a good idea after you get the wire pulled off, go ahead and put the nut back on the stud just so you don't lose it. Alright, right below that one you have a 8mm bolt that you need to remove for a ground wire. I would use a ratcheting wrench for that, just for easy access. Alright, next is the oil pressure sending unit right there beside the oil filter. It's a black rubber boot. You need to just grab it and pull it back to access the plug. It's just a squeeze and pull plug. I'm going to pull the boot back and then let you see the plug before we pull it, because it's hard to see with this hand there. The squeeze part of it's on the bottom, so it's kind of hard to see that, but you squeeze on it and pull that straight out. It's got the push button on it right there. Alright, next you have the harness here connected to the motor mount with that tie strap. It has a plug stuck into the motor mount. Just take a screwdriver in there and pry it off. Alright, we're going to move 3 connectors beside the fuse box. We're going to do the top one first. It's a push in and pull out plug. Like before, if they get stuck, you can always put the screwdriver on them to pull them out, to help pull them out. Sometimes they get stuck, sometimes they don't. The next one down has a rubber boot on it, but it's a plug on the, it's got a push thing on the bottom of it. You push it and just pull it out. You don't even have to remove the rubber boot. Okay, on the plug below, you need to remove it off the fuse box because it's going to go with the harness. So just grab it and slide it forward towards the front of the car, off the tab. And the top one was the same way. But the one in the middle, you can leave it on there because it's actually connected to the fuse box. And then next, we have the harness here. You need to just pry that piece back and then open it up without breaking it. And then that will release the harness off of there. Then here on the back side of the fuse box, you have another plug you're going to have to disconnect because it goes with the harness. It's just a press and pull. Last on the harness, there is a tie strap where you just pull the clip there and it just releases it. It actually hooks the harness to the chassis there. It's just got the little tab on the front side there. You just use your fingernail and pull it forward and then pull up on the harness so it releases the tie strap. Okay, now we're going to pull the harness out of the car. We're going to bring the front side of the harness towards the back of the car because it's got to go under that hard line right there. So you want to just get everything down through there. If it starts getting stuck, you can start pulling stuff down towards the bottom of the car there just to get it out of the way. And then we're going to bring the transmission harness up. You can go ahead and start pulling that straight up out of the car. Now you can go ahead and pull the rest of it up. Next, we're going to route these wires to the back so we can go ahead and remove them out too. which we're not going to remove the harness out yet because we're going to have to pull the two plugs off the back of the motor for the emission stuff. But we're just going to make it where we can pull the harness out a little bit when we're removing the motor, just to give us a leeway to pull it out. And then when we get the two spots on the back of the motor there, we'll be able to pull the whole harness out too. Of course, we'll probably wait till we get the motor out to totally pull the harness out. Okay, next you're going to remove the fuel and vacuum line run to the manifold here. They're Phillips head clamps. You just loosen them up. I always like to replace these lines anyways, so if they're hard to get off and you got to cut them off, no big deal. Because I would definitely recommend replacing them. The one he's cutting on right now is the vacuum line. This other one on the other side is a fuel line. So since we did a fuel pressure release, it's probably not going to leak none, but it is possible to still leak some out, so have a pan below. Alright, now we're going to hook the engine lift up to the motor. On the passenger side, you have two bolt holes there. We're going to run the chains on that. You want to use grade 8 bolts and probably 2 or 3 good sized washers. On that one, you want to do the bottom one first and turn it sideways so you'll be able to have room for the top one. And you just got to hand tighten them on there. You don't got to torque them down or anything. And then here on the driver's side, you have the two bolt hole locations right there. They're side by side, so you won't have much problem hooking the chain up on that. Just pull it tight, the leveler tight, if you're using a leveler, pull it tight on the other side, and then bolt them down. If you're not using a leveler, you could still run a chain through it and do it the same way, but we have a leveler, so we're going to use it. Okay, now you want to go ahead and put a jack on the transmission. Jack it up just a little bit so you can remove the transmission cross member. It's 4 17mm bolts, 2 on each side you need to remove. Okay, next we need to remove the shifter. So go ahead and pull your trim piece up. Just grab it and pop it up. There's little tabs on the bottom. Be careful not to break them or anything. Pull the whole thing out, put it in the back of the seat of the car. Okay, after you have your shift knob removed too, you got 4 12mm bolts you need to remove the rubber boot. I'm sorry, they're 10mm. 4 10mm bolts. Then you go ahead and grab the boot and pull it up out. Now as you can see, this car here is like really dirty. Always had a lot of leaks. You have 4 12mm bolts there and there. And then you have 2 more up front there. You're going to get under the car to get the 2 up front because you can't get to them from inside the car. So I would recommend using a ratcheting wrench on the 2 up front there to get under the car. I'm going to go ahead and remove these in the back here. And over here, right in front of where this bolt is, underneath, there's a spring down there with a check ball. Just for future reference on that. It's not a high tension spring or anything, it's just a little small spring, so it's not going to kick up. Okay, after you have those 2 up, last 2, you need to get the last 2 right there in the front. Okay, showing you on this SR transmission here, you can see the 4 that we removed there, and then there's the 2 up in the front that you have to remove from underneath the car. And it's a pretty tight spot, that's why I recommend using a ratcheting wrench. And also, since you have the transmission crossmember already removed from the chassis, you can lower the jack down some, so the transmission will kick down a little bit, and it'll give you more room to work there and remove those. And after you get those 2 off, the whole assembly will pull up out through the inside of the car. Now you got all 6 bolts removed, you're going to grab the assembly, pull the whole thing up. Alright, like I said before, there's a spring there. Just pull it out. That's what the spring looks like. And then the same hole you got that out of, there is a check ball down there. You need to take a magnetic wand to remove that. Just stick it down in the hole all the way to the bottom. And it pulls a check ball out right there. You can leave those in there, but they're easily lost, so I'll go ahead and pull them out and put them in a baggie. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and jack the motor up a little bit, since we still have our AC compressor still connected to the car there. Just so the motor mount and the motor mount bracket there don't get in the way. We're going to jack the motor up, and we're going to release the 4 14mm bolts. There's one right there, one above it, one right there, and one above it. There are 4 14mm bolts. Removes them all. The motor mount nut is already off, so when we get it up off the cross member right there, the motor mount, we'll be able to remove that, and it won't get in the way of our AC compressor when we pull the motor out. Since we had fuel coming out of our hardline here, I went ahead and put a rubber glove on it and tie strapped it so it didn't leak no more. And also, you gotta make sure you have a jack underneath your transmission there. You could probably, when you get the motor up enough, you probably remove it. Because basically what we're gonna do, we're gonna jack the motor up, let it hit the transmission hit the bottom of the top of the firewall, and it's gonna kick the motor up like that. So when you pull it back, because there is those 2 hard lines down there, the transmission is going to want to hit those. Those are for the power steering rack. Now that we have it up enough and we got the motor mount out of the chassis there on the cross member, we're going to go ahead and remove the motor mount and the bracket out of there, and then continue pulling the motor up. Okay, now that we got the motor almost out, we don't forget you got the 2 on the back side you got to remove. They both have the metal clip on them. So like before, use your 2 small flathead screwdrivers to remove the metal clip. And just grab it and pull it straight out. Okay, and then you have your next one on the driver's side. Same deal, it has a metal clip in it. Alright, then after you have those removed, go ahead and grab that whole part of the harness and pull it over to the passenger side of the car. Keep it out of the way of the motor. Pull it forward. That exhaust thing down there is touching the tunnel, so just watch out for that because it's going to kick back. Okay, to remove the glove box, you have two 10mm bolts on the bottom. Then the glove box comes straight out. Okay, next we're going to pull the kick panel off here to access the ECU. You have a Phillips head screw up top in the back to remove, and then you have one on the bottom corner here you need to remove. And then after you have both those screws out, you have another Phillips head screw on the outside there, and then you need to pull your door seal up to be able to pull that kick panel all the way off. The one on the top outside there is a pop rivet. You just kind of screw it out and pry it out with a flathead screwdriver. And the same with the door jamb seals. They're the same way. They got the screws in them with the pop rivets. You just pry them out with flathead screwdrivers. You can probably just remove those first two there and then pry it up. It's just a little lip on the kick panel there. Now you can just pull the kick panel out. There is a harness on the back, so don't pull it out all the way because you need to disconnect the harness right here. Just push it in and pull it out. And now we're going to remove the ECU. You need to remove the harness from it, the connector. It's a 10mm bolt. And as soon as it comes off, just pull it straight back. After you get the harness out of the way, you can see a 10mm bolt for a bracket right there. You need to remove that bolt. And there's one up top too. I'll show you that one in just a minute. And then you have another 10mm bolt on top of the ECU for a bracket. You can't really see it right now, but it's just right there where his socket's at. And then after you get that one off, you have another 10mm bolt on the very bottom here that you need to remove. Oops. Then it has a little connector where the wiring hooks to the ECU. You're just going to use a flathead screwdriver or some needle nose pliers and pop that off. And then the ECU is out. And then after you have the ECU out, you need to go up top here where the dash was, and there's a brown connector. It's a push and pull connector. That's your dash plug. Just push and pull it out and disconnect it. And then pull it down. Okay, under the dash, there is a plastic bracket that's shaped like an L that runs right behind that piece of plastic right there. It actually goes through that stud, so we had to actually break ours off because it was almost impossible to get off. It's got a little tab right there. We just broke it off, and then after you get that off, you'll be able to pull it out through the firewall of the engine bay. Now we're going to pull the wiring harness through the firewall. We have someone inside guiding everything through just so it doesn't get caught up. And then while you're pulling it through, everything's eventually going to come out underneath those hard lines there. So we're going to pull it towards the driver's side of the car, but first of all we're going to pull it through the firewall. So you want to grab it and just start pulling it through and pull that grommet all the way out. And continue pulling while the other person inside the car is helping guide everything through. Just make sure when you're pulling out that you watch your AC hard line and keep everything above it.
Keep on
Alright. Alright. End of the road.
Okay, now the harness is out through the firewall. Now we're going to direct it around through under these hard lines here. Yeah, feed the dash plug through first. And your harness is out. Okay, to show you the clip that I broke on the harness, it's on the plastic bracket there. That's what broke off. Now we're going to remove the complete coil assembly. It has two 10mm bolts holding it on. One to the power steering pump. And the coil assembly is out. Alright, now we're going to remove the heater hose on the firewall that we left on there. It's a 8mm clamp. And like before, that heater core coming out is plastic, so be careful and don't break it. Make sure your clamp's loose enough. And that's off. Okay, to remove the undercar splash, you have 4 bolts in the front. Ours is all pretty much ripped off the thing, but if yours is still intact, you got 4 in the front there to remove. And then after you get those off, you have 3 10mm bolts. And then you have 2 more over here on this side. And then the splash shield will come off. Okay, when you're going to remove your fender lining, you have a hold down right there where that hole is. Ours is actually gone, but there's one supposed to be there. It's just you push the middle in and then pull it out. Okay, you have 8 Phillips head screws you need to remove on the fender lining. It's a whole lot easier access if you turn your wheel in. On the top side, you could probably use a stubby screwdriver to get to those. Those are going to be hard to get to with a regular screwdriver. They pretty much just run along the fender lining there. And then on this car, there would be 2 more right there. This one does not have them. Someone's already removed them, but there should be 2 more right there. And that would complete 8. And then down here on the bottom underneath the side skirt, you have a 8mm bolt you need to remove. Okay, on the inside of the fender liner, you have the bullet hold downs. You just press in the middle and pull them out. There are 7 of them. We're going to show you where they're at. This is on the back side. There's number 1. There's number 2. There's number 3. And then going over here to the front side. Number 4. And then number 5 is right there. You got to get inside here. Number 6 should be there. Ours is missing, but there should be one there. Number 7 is right there. And that's it. Okay, this is what they look like. As you can see, this side of it here is what is on the outside of the car. On the inside of the hole has these pieces here that sprawl out. When you push the bullet through, it'll open them up so it'll hold it in the hole. But when you push the button through all the way with the screwdriver, it'll release those, let them close in so it'll be able to pull out. But when you're going to put them back in, you want to pull the bullet out all the way, but you might have to lift the tabs up. And then you want to go ahead and put the plug in and then put the bullet through it, and then it'll hold it in. We're going to go ahead and remove all 7 of them. Okay, after you have all the plugs out, you want to start on the back side and pull it off. You have these little hold down pieces here. You want to pull them off the tabs of the fender and just go all the way around towards the front of the car. After you get to the front side, you want to pull the inside down and then pull it down towards the front of the car. It should slide out. Take a little bit of maneuvering to get it out, but it will come out. Of course, it'd be a bit easier if your tire was off, but it's no big deal. And then showing from the driver's side of the car, on the inside of your trim piece right here, let me show you the trim piece. It's this piece right here. You gotta take that off before you take the bumper off. You have 2 10mm nuts. You got one on top there, one on the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and remove those. If your car's rusted really badly, I would definitely shoot all these bolts and nuts with WD-40. Okay, after you got that bolt off, you have a Phillips head down there where his screwdriver is you need to remove. So we're going to remove that now. It's a Phillips head screw. After you have that out, you should be able to pull the trim piece off. You're going to want to pull down on the front lip if you have that. Just pull down on it, but don't break it, and then the trim piece will come off. Okay, on the driver's side, you have 2 more 10mm nuts to remove. We have our ratchet on it right now. Let's see if I can get a light up there to show you where it's at. You have the harness coming in right there. You have the nut down there, and then you have another one right there you need to remove. And that's to disconnect the front bumper to the fender. Alright, on the front here, in front of the radiator, you have 4 bullet hold downs. They actually have screws instead of bullets. Just take a flathead screwdriver, stick it underneath, and just kind of pry up on it a little bit while you unscrew the screw. I'll show you how they work when we get it pulled out. You just pull the screw completely out. Once you get it so far, you should be able to grab the screw and just pull it out. Okay, as you can see how it works out. You have the screw in the middle, which opens it up and holds it in there, and then you just pull it straight out after you get the screw screwed out some. You don't have to pull the screw completely out, but sometimes it helps. And you have 4 of those to remove here. Okay, you're going to want to disconnect your harness behind your turn signal light. You have 2 Phillips head screws you need to remove. Okay, after you have your light out, you want to disconnect your harness. It's a push and pull out harness connector. And then you have the same thing on the passenger side of the car. Okay, next you have 4 10mm bolts you got to remove. You got 2 right there. You have 2 more on this side. I'm going to go ahead and remove those. Okay, next down here under the hole, you have 4 10mm bolts to remove. I'm going to remove those. After you remove this last bolt, the metal bracket there is going to fall down, so you want to hold it up. Okay, after you have all the bolts, nuts, and wiring removed from the front bumper, you can pull it off. You want to pull it off evenly on both sides or it will get binded up on there. So kind of wiggle it while you're pulling it off or whatever comes off easier. And it should come off no problem. Okay, now we're going to remove the bottom air box down here. You have 3 10mm bolts to remove. You got one right there. Your other 2 are over here. And after you remove those, the box will come down. Okay, when you're getting ready to move the last one, you want to hold the box up because it's going to fall. As you can see, it's already getting ready to fall. We're going to remove this box completely and not put it back on because our air cooler piping is going to be running through there. Okay, next you want to disconnect this connection because it runs through your bumper support. It's a push and pull apart connector. Disconnect it and then take it through the hole of the bumper support. And you have the same connection on the other side as well. Okay, to remove the bumper support, you have one 14mm bolt, and on the back you have one 14mm nut on each side. You want to go ahead and remove both of those on each side. Okay, after you have the harness disconnected, you want to pull it through the hole there of the bumper support. You'll have a plastic clip hooked to the bumper support you're going to need to disconnect. Plastic clip is right there. Just take a flathead screwdriver and pry it off, or just grab it with your hands and pull it off. Once you got that off, you got access to your nut and bolt there to remove. After you get that off on both sides, you'll be able to pull the bumper support off. Okay, after you got it unbolted and all the wiring pulled off of it, just grab it and pull it forward. And your bumper support is off.